Hello, YouTube. Today I'm doing a reaction slash debunking video of this tanky slash socialist uh, YouTuber, whatever his name is. Anyway, he's trying to claim that socialism did not kill 100 million people. And yeah.
Slain Nazi collaborators as victims of communism. Aside from this, the Black Book counts the mass murder of dissidents and rebellious workers, gulag deaths, purges, dekulakization, and more.
So here's communist apologetics number one in the playbook. The deaths had nothing to do with communism. Socialists are really good at deflecting the incredibly obvious failures of their ideology when put into practice. They've got a lot of experience because every experiment in socialism ends in abject failure. This isn't a coincidence. It's the inevitable consequence of giving the state total control over society. He doesn't want to count the gulag deaths. The gulags were essentially uh, prisons that held political prisoners. These weren't people that were rapists or murderers. They had committed the terrible crime of worshiping Christ in their own home or being a member of the wrong socialist political party. I mean, you could get thrown in the gulag for anything simply because you rubbed a powerful party member the wrong way. The terrors of the Gulag system were documented in the work of Solzhenitsyn, who wrote The Gulag Archipelago, a phenomenal read, as well as a couple other books that dealt with life in the Gulag system. And they called it the Gulag Archipelago. An archipelago, of course, is like a series of islands. And they called it the Gulag Archipelago because there were the gulags were sort of set up all over Russia, like a series of disconnected islands. I remember there was one quote in the Gulag Archipelago that really stuck with me. Uh, and we burned in the camps later, thinking, what would things have been like if every security operative, when he went out at night to make an arrest, had been uncertain whether he would return alive and had to say goodbye to his family? Or if during periods of mass arrests, as for example in Leningrad, when they arrested a quarter of the entire city, people had not simply sat there in their lairs, howling with terror at every bang of the downstairs door and at every step on the staircase, but had understood they had nothing left to lose and had boldly set up in the downstairs hall an ambush of half a dozen people with axes, hammers, pokers, or whatever else was at hand. After all, you knew ahead of time that those blue caps were out at night for no good purpose, and you could be sure ahead of time that you'd be cracking the skull of a cutthroat. Or what about the Black Maria, sitting out there on the street with one lonely chauffeur? What if it had been driven off or its tires spiked? The organs would quickly have suffered a shortage of officers and transport, and notwithstanding all of Stalin's thirst, the cursed machine would have ground to a halt. If, if we didn't love freedom enough. The terrible thing about the Soviet Union and the Gulag system and the secret police, the NKVD, which is Russian for something, was the way that they would turn families against each other. Children would inform on their parents, and people would get disappeared. They'd be taken out of photographs, like they never existed. If you criticize the state, if you criticize communism, if you spoke out in any way, so there's no freedom of expression. It was a surveillance society unlike any that we've known in the West, and it's just such a slave society, such a terrible thing, um, and so arbitrary. You know, people criticize America as the world's largest prison nation, But at least those people have due process. They're in there because they committed a crime, and there's some reforms that need to be made, I think, in most modern legal systems. But there's due process. There's the burden of proof beyond all reasonable doubt. It's difficult in most Western nations to get wrongly convicted, in my opinion. But the Soviet system, it wasn't like that at all. There's a fictional novel, Gorky Park, my favorite book, which describes life in sort of the later period in the Soviet Union in the 80s and 70s. And